This conference will now be recorded.
Town of Cottage Grove Planning Commission will hold a public meeting on Wednesday, August 25th, 2021 at 7 p.m. at the Town Hall, 4058 County Road Inn. You can also join the meeting by GoToMeeting. Meeting was posted at the Town Hall and on the website. We have a quorum of presence. Steve Anders is online with us. I'll call the meeting to order. We have the minutes of the July 28th meeting in your packet. Do we have a motion on the minutes?
Yeah, motion.
Motion by Myler, second by Klinger to approve the minutes as presented. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Abstention. Motion carried. Next item is public's opportunity to speak to the Planning Commission about any subject that is not a specific agenda item. Anyone? Moving on then. Dwayne Swalheim, applicant, Swalheim 2011 Revocable Trust, Landowner, North Star Road, parcel 711-73-9000-6, seeking concept plan approval for phased commercial development. Continued from our July 28th meeting. So the old map that we had, we can regard that.
Disregard that one, yeah. Yeah. They asked for water retention, so I got an engineering doing water retention. You see on two of the maps, concept plans. And then the big difference is on a preliminary survey, instead of having those three small lots, we got a lot number one, 1.1 acres and a 1.2, and the 5.99, the big lot.
Excuse me just a second, Mark, do you want to update?
Yeah,
these projects?
Great. Thank you.
That's gross with no revenue.
Now for lots 6, 7, 8 to be workable, they have to scrape off the high down there, which would be the east part of the lot 3, and probably the southern part, like the lot 5, 5 is, because they'll need quite a bit of fill to get that to fill some of it up as much as a foot to get that water retention to work. Also, they put the one water retention off-site because that's a landlocked area. So you're not farmable anymore because it's landlocked. There's a creek there. So we suggest either an easement or a rezone or whatever we can do there to keep it off-site.
Is that your line there?
Yes, yeah. But there's a waterway there, so it's a little triangle piece that's very unworkable.
Are you going to be able to put that retention on there?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There's no,
Because he owns it.
you don't, but there's no protection corridor or anything like that that would prevent him from doing it. I don't know. I was asking.
I didn't hear anything. No.
Right.
No.
I was happy to see you increase the size of the lot from this one,
Oh, okay.
but then you shrunk them down again.
That's why we didn't need. I originally had 3 1-acre lots, and I just got 2.
And you're leaving the 66 feet for eventual road end between 1 and 2. Yeah, it's falling quarter. So this could be built. Right. At some point.
So that started. What lots did you want to sell first?
Well, the ones that 1,
2 or 3.
1, 2, and 3, yes.
Is it talk, and from the last thing we were talking about, the North Star Road that runs east-west, that would be improved on lot 8.
Well, I might have to improve right away, and could even for lot 3. You guys have
Yeah.
access on both sides, I'm not sure, but what's gonna happen to lot 3, but they'll be improved with everything else. Yeah. Pardon me, misunderstood.
You'll dedicate the road right away. Because that east-west, I'm assuming that was only 49 and a half and we'll want 66.
Yeah, yeah,
So it's only a 3 rod.
yeah. Now, does that go off into my property and Mary Score's property? We go from the center of the road and out now?
I would assume that would probably be the best way of doing it, keeping the center of the
Center line,
road.
yeah.
Here it is. And split that rod between the two
Yeah.
landowners to the north and to the south.
Yeah.
Mark, do you have any comments?
Yeah, a few. So the stormwater, on the stormwater, some of that will likely have to be improved with the first 3 lots.
Yes, yeah, we'll be putting everything right away. Because they're gonna have to drain down there. I mean, there's nowhere else to go, so they're gonna have to be right away.
Yeah.
And then lot 3, that's gotta be scraped because that's high. We use that for fill, so it's all gonna have to be done before anything is sold.
So in addition, if you're just going with the 4 lots certified survey map to start with, there would need to be an easement, I would presume, for the offsite, plus an easement
Yes,
on lot 4 in the area that you are going to be using for stormwater management until and unless the rest of
oh, I
it
see,
got
because,
built out.
yeah, because it's not defined, you mean,
Right.
okay.
We, the concept plan looks great, but, for everyone's benefit, we wouldn't want to count on that. Developing, it's conceivable, I suppose, that you might find a user that would want all of lot 4, or at least the portion of lot 4 that's, suggested on the concept plan for 5, 6, and 6. So, which would then not require a town road, perhaps. So I just would encourage you to, plan for that, possibility that it lot 4 may be divided like your concept plan, which would be fine, but it may be divided in a different way. So the area that's shown as lot 9 would initially be encompassed within a stormwater management easement.
Oh, I see, yes,
Also.
yes. Yes, yeah,
That on the original CSM.
okay, I see what you're saying, yes.
And then the other comment, I know, so those are intended to be common, stormwater basins that'll serve more than one lot. And as I understand it, the preference would be that they be maintained by the lot owners in common. But there needs to be a guaranteed access to them as well.
That's how you did this down here, that's the access point, right there.
I see it.
Yeah, okay.
But again, if all we're starting with is this CSM, then that just needs to be assured up front, because it could potentially be that we never get to this concept plan the way it's drawn.
Right.
So that would apply to the basin on what's shown as lot 9, and it would also apply, in my opinion, to the basin that's off-site, that whoever's in charge of maintaining it needs to have the right to cross real estate to get to it, to maintain it.
But wouldn't the people who buy lot 8, 7, and 6 be obligated to maintain them? So they wouldn't need to access, they're right on that, right?
If you create a lot 6, 7, and 8, and you set up the deed restrictions that way to require them to maintain it, but right now, on day 1, as I understand it, this is all you're creating. But if you're creating the common stormwater basins, you have to have a plan, a recorded plan in place that documents how these guys are going to maintain it. And then you can amend that plan later on.
As of now, wouldn't I have to maintain it?
What's that?
I have to maintain it as of
So
now.
that's fine.
Yeah.
I own it. Right.
But you could convey lot 4 tomorrow to someone else. You could convey the land to the south tomorrow to someone else. So there's, in my opinion, still should be documentation that describes how, and if documentation says the owner of lot 4 shall maintain the stormwater basin on lot 4 and the one to the south, then that's cool. But, it should be clear up front. So there's not an argument later on, well, lot 4 guy cuts off access to stormwater for lot 1 guy. And then everyone shrugs,
Right. So where is this documented? Where is it at? In what document would that be put in?
It would be a deed restriction
A
that
deed
you would
restriction, okay.
have prepared or prepare yourself. And it would be recorded along with the certified. Yeah.
Okay, I see, okay.
So, and that would apply to both, that kind of document would apply forever and ever for the one to the south. That's off-site, but it may be replaced later on if the original CSM evolves to become the concept plan with something else.
Yeah.
And you can amend those documents over time.
Right.
If there's a second CSM that dedicates Walheim Court and creates the other lots beyond the first 4.
So when that gets recorded, you have to be a deed restriction.
That's all part of the same.
Right, and the way I typically have seen this, all the documents get prepared and sort of recorded in the correct sequence so everyone knows, that they're there, and, no one would get a building permit on any of the lots until all the documents were properly recorded.
So on the new preliminary certified survey map, this lot 9 has to be identified, right?
Well, it would have to be described. It would
Yeah.
be shown kind of like Bjorncott showed the easement area on the south. It would just be another easement area right
Yes.
now.
Yes.
It wouldn't be designated as lot 9.
Yeah.
But the boundary would probably be the same or pretty close to the same.
Yeah.
The only other comment on the kind of the right of way, I think Chris is right. The common practice would be to require half of the extra right of way from one side of the street and half of the extra. So, I mean, I don't know if my math is right, but that would require with the CSM a dedication of what, 8.25 feet from the south, and then another 8.25 feet from the north, and that would, I think, get up to 66. But the north stuff you don't control, so that would happen at some future date.
At a later time.
Right. But the road design might have to, potentially be adjusted to accommodate the fact that we don't have as much right of way on the north side as we do on the south side.
Right.
You're gonna need a ditch and
Yeah,
so forth. And then that plus the right of the 33 feet on North Star Road, if that hasn't been dedicated, that would also be shown as dedicated to the public with the CSM.
That'd also be, gonna be,
That's already done,
It's already been done.
oh, okay.
because that was originally 3 rod, and when we improved it to 4, we went through that to that corner.
Gotcha. And, and we can certainly work this out, but the only other thing with where you see the 75-foot wetland buffer, including that in the CSM is important, but describing what it means through at least a note on the CSM is also important, what you can and can't do in that buffer.
Okay.
People are gonna, well, can I put gravel down? Well, the answer is no. Can I grade in it? Well, you can grade in the first. There's all sorts of rules, CARPC and others promulgate as to what you can and can't do.
But that only applies to lots 6, 7, 8, because they border it.
Right, but initially with the CSM, again, my point is that we can't count on that concept to ever, it would be recorded on the first CSM as, probably a note on the bottom
Lot
that
4,
would say, within 75-foot wetland buffer, no buildings, impervious surfaces, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Here's a standard note. Dan probably has it.
Yeah.
Those are really the only other comments I have in response to this new plan.
Okay. Anything from the public? Anything from the
Steve is
planning?
raising his hand. I'm gonna, Steve, you'll have to unmute yourself.
I can do that, thanks. And to make sure I was hearing Dwayne correctly, his plan initially is to sell the first 3 lots that are directly on North Star Road?
Yeah.
Okay, where, and then the stormwater from those lots would drain directly into North Star then?
Lot 4.
Yeah, a lot for.
Steve, you're kind of at a disadvantage because they brought in a new paper concept plan today that I can't show you because I don't have it electronically yet.
Okay,
But
It would have been lot 9 on that first draft, which incorporates 6, 7, 8, and 9.
lot 1 and 2 are similar to what you have, but lot 3 is now, I don't know how to show you, a lot bigger. Takes up about a third
It's
of
not the
the,
same size,
no,
5.36 acres net.
it was 1.19 on the one that was in your packet.
Oh,
So it's a little different, it's quite a bit different size for lot 3. And then everything else is lot 4.
oh, okay. Is the road still in the same place yet, or the potential road?
same place.
Same place, yep.
Okay, how do you get stormwater to run from lot 1 up going north then, towards lot 4? You gonna put a culvert under the road then to send it up that way?
There's another wetland to the southeast
There's another stormwater easement up of
off-site.
site. In the
The one
bottom,
that's that triangle shaped piece, correct?
Yeah,
So lot 1 would drain all the way back to there then?
most likely.
That is 15, that's quite a bit higher. That's 890 feet compared to 867. It's a lot higher. On that, you can see up there how many feet high everything is. It's 890 from, down to 870.
Take a picture of that. Text it to him.
I don't have it electronically, so once you can, want to
You
take a
can-
picture on your
I
phone.
can send
Oh, Mark,
you some pictures of it, I'm sending.
Okay.
Mark, taking pictures for
Mark
you.
Kudina just texted me the map, so I got a better idea of what, thanks, Mark.
You gotta do
Okay,
it.
the last question I would have, if I could continue, would be, what happens if he sells the 3 lots and the land in the back doesn't get developed? If we can't find anybody to buy it? Weren't we looking to go ahead and have a conceptual plan for the entire property from everybody who was proposing to develop along North Star?
I don't understand.
Repeat your question.
Pretty much same thing Troy was just asking.
I think he's asking, like Mark Crawford said, what if there's no interest beyond lots 1, 2, 3? What happens then? Is that what you're saying, Steve?
Well,
Exactly.
lot 4 is going to have the stormwater, the stormwater easement off-site. And so the deed restriction would accompany the CSM, showing access to the stormwater ponds.
Okay.
And if he develops 6, 7, and 8, then the deed restriction will change as those properties are sold off of lot 4.
As far as who's responsible for the stormwater facilities.
Right, for the maintenance.
And how you get access might change too. Line Court is built, and lot 5 is developed in a particular way. There might be a particular advantage to an easement through their parking lot or whatever it happens to be.
Dwayne, you're gonna level all that woodland.
We have to have enough fill to make the water retentions work.
Correct.
Gotta have it, otherwise, none of this, otherwise none of this is gonna work.
Right. But you're gonna have to do that in order to
You
even,
don't know. Remember, we take out all that from the water retention, that's part of it.
yeah,
And then the engineer, Byron Quam is saying, Brian Quam, you know, we take up there on this lot number 3, there's a lot up there, that's 20 feet tall higher, so I don't know if that's gonna do enough. Some of this only has to come up a foot. So, and then this is like 10 or 20 foot taller, so, and on lot number 1, that's where they're still there.
so, but you're gonna have to level off the woods, and then you're gonna have to divert the water from lot 1 through lot 5.
Yes, it's gonna have to be diverted, yes.
Yeah,
But that's not all hill, I mean, some of that's very low, it's not all hill.
right, but you're just gonna have a channel.
But that's not, there is a valley there already.
Yep.
Right there.
Help create the waterway.
Lot 2 would drain into
Right there, that,
what that
Lot
retention
nine.
is, lot 9. So lot 9 is technically really gonna be created, isn't it?
The stormwater portion will be created.
Yeah.
Lot 9 won't be created unless he sells 6, 7, and 8.
Correct, but that area will be created, okay.
Yeah, by lot 4.
And then 3 is gonna also drain into the retention pond, which is,
we're gonna skim that for, yeah.
Yeah.
And I would just say that, yeah, I appreciate you need to balance the site and make it all work. But, you know, my suggestion would be, obviously, you take fill from the stormwater basins first.
Yeah, right.
You look to what you can get from lot 3 second.
Yep.
And then see what you need from other locations third. And I appreciate that not all those woods and maybe not a majority of those woods are any good, but some of them may be, and they provide some buffer from North Star to the lots 6 and 7, which may prove advantageous to providing screening for whatever goes on in those lots in the future.
brought that up at the last meeting, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That's why I asked,
Storage.
right, and that's why I asked you, to level at all. I mean, it's not that it should be entirely level, but to be selective, correct?
Well, wouldn't like a strip of 10, 20 feet buffer just as good as woods that's
Yeah, I
200 foot.
could be.
Yeah.
Any other?
So my question is, this lot 9 where the retention, that has to be on the next preliminary survey map, as a lot for designated for retention, so it has to be there.
No, it's, you'll create the retention pond in lot 4.
It'll probably be an easement area dashed in.
Yes, yes, but it'll be
It won't be
defined.
it won't be a separate
It'll
lot.
just be defined, it has to be defined.
Right, because that's where you're gonna build it.
Yes,
And that's where at least a couple of lots are going to be counting on in perpetuity to dump their stormwater.
yes.
So they have to have that right to do that. And the easement provides that right, and the description of the easement provides that right. It's not a separate lot that you'd be creating initially, but it's going to be a defined area that contains the stormwater base.
Yes.
Goes up for this first 3 lots.
And, you know, Dan, Ericott, and Ryan, well, you know, they know about this stuff. I mean, they're good advisors to you.
Yeah, okay.
So is there any other discussion on seeking a concept plan approval for Dwayne Swalline for lot 1, 2, 3, and 4? Is there a motion? I'll make a motion then to approve the concept plan for lots 1, 2, 3, 4 with the stormwater's retention spelled out with easements, and the additional width that lot 3 will dedicate for North Star Road. Motion by Hampton, second by Miller.
Just 3 or 3 and 4 dedicated.
Well, yes, we should include 4. All the way. That's 1, 2, 3, and 4 dedicated for North Star Road. They're half of the 16.5 feet.
That's a deed restriction under.
Deed restriction for the water retention
And also the easement offsite, right?
and the easement offsite that he showed already on this one. Needs to show that up here then too. Any other discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Do we have to put this on the town
So
board
then the concept plan needs to go to the town board this one.
on the 30th?
That'll be next Monday.
Next Monday will be at the town board. We're meeting on 30th because of the holiday.
Then we apply for the county after that.
Then the next step will be
To rezone.
Okay, all right.
Okay. Next item is Helen Galerowitz Living Trust, applicant landowner seeking a rezone of 37.93 acres from FP 35 to FP 1 to separate existing residential lot from agricultural land and divide ag land into 2 separate parcels. And Robert Wilson's online.
Hello, this is Robert Williamson.
Go ahead.
Okay, what we're doing is the total lot is about 38 acres. Karen and Don Ellenfeld live what is lot 1. Okay, right there, yes. Lot 1. Lot 2 would be to the east and south of them. And lot 3 is a crazy lot. It goes all the way up to Violet's Hope Road.
Right.
What it's doing is just splitting that up. I can answer questions if there are questions.
There's no building rights on any of the lots, correct?
Correct. That's correct.
And the portion that abuts Violet's Hope Road, I'm not sure if that's ever been dedicated or not. We
As
would
far
like
as
that-
dedicated, what do you mean?
You may own to the middle of the road.
Looks like they've got that. If you look at the dots, they've got that accounted for. If you look at the rezone map, they got both a zoning map, but it's shown up on the screen if you want to look.
Center line of trail road dedicated to public for road right of way. Okay, yep.
Yeah, I think it should be.
Yeah. Okay.
Need adding a cul-de-sac?
Huh?
Adding a cul-de-sac too?
Cul-de-sac was already there.
No,
Wasn't built, was it?
it's not there.
There is a cul-de-sac there, but this is defining it in a more correct way, I guess I should say.
It looks like the cul-de-sac, there is a bulb, but it extends onto 2, or at least 1 lot that's been developed. Maybe there's an easement on that lot, maybe there's not.
Yeah. It was probably before they built that final lot, lot one.
Okay. So there's no building going to go on any of the 3 lots.
There is a building right now. Karen and Don Ellenfeld live on lot 1. And no, there is no other building. There may be in the future.
What was that, Robert?
Lot 1 here.
Yep.
As a
In
house.
the future, there may be a building on lot 3 somewhere.
With a transfer of
They
development.
would have to
rights, right?
transfer one in.
Right, which is passed a few months ago in Cottage Grove, correct?
So they'd be building on that 18 acres?
Yes,
Would it be allotted off to? Are we talking about?
Probably lot 3.
Right,
you'll be right in lot 3 somewhere. I'm really not sure where. What the plan is Karen and Don Ellenfeld are going to buy lot 2. And we have a purchaser for lot 3 who want to build a house at some time, but not right now.
And he knows that they have to buy that building right.
They know that, yes.
Okay.
Are we getting rid of that rule for 2-acre lot?
That'll come when they want to rezone it.
When they
For
want to build,
residential.
they'll have to, this is going to be zoned FP.
Okay,
FP1.
So they'll have to rezone, get a building right and rezone to a residential classification to do that.
Then we'll hit them with the house lot will be 2 acres. And the rest would probably still remain FP1.
Okay.
Any other questions from the planning commission? Any questions from the public?
I guess I got one more. Mark, does this fit into what they're doing here? Does it fit in with our new plan we're talking about doing?
The plan as currently crafted still has these shown as these lots as egg preservation. But I think that would be okay because the town, as Robert mentioned, when we went through the last amendment cycle, did allow 1-to-1 transfers between lots in the egg preservation area.
They're going from FP 35 to FP 1, so they'd still be farmland preservation zoning.
So they'd need to find one right from somewhere else in the egg preservation area and move it here to build a house. So that's a good question, but I don't think any comprehensive plan change would be required.
We've been told no, that it wouldn't, that we're talking with Pam Andros of Dane County. I've been assured that, they will be able to build a house on here.
Yep.
So is there a motion? Don't be shy.
We're just providing land right now.
Yeah.
And the other people have got their lots. We extended those out here. Lot extensions.
Yes, yeah, that's already happened. Those that wanted the extra footage.
Chris, do you have your motion?
Not yet.
I'll move approval of the rezone from FP 35 to FP 1 for 37.93 acres, which separates the existing residential lot from the ag land and dividing the ag land into 2 separate parcels noting that there currently is no development rights on either of the newly created parcels.
Okay. Motion by Anders, is there a second? Second by Kleiner. Everybody understand that motion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. It'll be, Robert, it'll be on Monday, the 30th, for the town board to take action.
Okay, that's this Monday coming.
Right.
Okay, great.
Because of the holiday, we moved it up.
No, that's fine. We appreciate that. That's good to know. Then it does have to go to Dane County after that, correct?
Right.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Next item is Donald Vinnie, applicant, Vinnie Acres LLC, landowner, looking for a rezone of 15 plus or minus acres from RR4 and RM8 to RR1 for 1.837 acres, RR2 2.056, and FP1 for the remaining 10.459 acres to create one new residential lot, separate the existing home and buildings, and better configure the remainder for farming. So lot 1 is new, lot 2 is taking up all the farm buildings, with one building being removed that crosses the line, and lot 3 would go back to farmland. Pretty much it.
You're getting, how many splits did you have left?
This fell under that,
There was one left.
yeah, there was one, there's,
Still left.
yeah.
One still left.
Remember that was the whole, this was that Howdy Farm years ago, and there were two, and there's two out there, so this will take one of those two, but there'll still be one out there.
Right.
Yeah.
That could be used in lot 3
Or sold or whatever.
whatever.
It'll be transferred eventually.
It's not dedicated to lot 3 right
No,
No, where do you, what do you do with that? How do you document that?
Just need to make sure that it's well documented in our minutes and communicated to the county, so hopefully it gets documented in their minutes or their staff report or something.
you still retain one RDU with this farm.
Yeah,
So we need to probably talk to Pam about
Yep.
that again, too.
Yep.
Same thing as Otto.
yep.
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 Okay. There's something else.
Questions? And of course, you'll dedicate Shadle Road.
Yeah, it's already taken out of there, so.
Any questions from the public? Anyone wish to make a motion?
now. I'll make a motion to approve as presented. Parcels 0711-363-9245-0 and 0711-363-9205-0 at Shadle Road, or I should say 18.34 Shadle Road. Creating an RR4 and RM8 to RR, am I saying that right?
Oh,
All right, well,
Lot 1 being
Lot one.
RR4 going to RR1.
Yep.
Lot 2, RM8 going to RR2. And the remaining are going to FP1. Right?
so that's correct.
On lot 2, they can have up to 2 large animals.
Yes. 2 animal units.
Motion by Troy, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Myler to approve lot 1 going from RR4 to RR1, lot 2 going from RM8 to RR2, and lot 3 going from RR4 and RM8 to FP1. Did you want to make note in your motion that there is one remaining RDU that still remains with that farm?
Yes.
In your motion?
In the motion that there is one RDU remaining with the Bobby Farm.
Sorry, but the second?
Yeah, second.
Any discussion on that motion? And all those in favor signify by saying aye.
All right.
Opposed, aye. Motion carried. Monday night.
Thank you. Thank you.
Next item, continued discussion on the update to the comprehensive plan focusing on potential adjustments to the land use chapter, future land use maps, and economic development program.
We'll do a little remodeling here if you don't mind. I've got Nick online, there he is. And he's, if he gets permission, he's going to be sharing the screen with the documents we're going to be working through. Looks like he's got them.
Yeah, you can see everything now, Mark?
Yes, yes, we can.
Perfect, great.
So what I wanted to put up first is actually our timeline and just kind of ground everyone as to where we're at with the comprehensive plan. So if you could bring that up, Nick, please. Our process began in January, as the commission knows. We did a community survey in the spring. We prepared background information and shared what's called the conditions and issues volume in the plan around that time. In June, we had a landowner forum where every owner of that owned or controlled 35 acres or more got an invite to come or participate online. That invitation and the meeting came with an offer to, if folks, after looking at and understanding the future land use map, had some suggestions for change, they could provide them. Sort of the substitute for the annual amendment process, I suppose. Over the course of the summer, we've been working, as you know, on some of the materials that are before you tonight. We've also been talking with Pam from the county on a variety of issues, and with the municipal planners from the adjoining 2 villages now and city on areas of mutual interest and concern. So that brings us to tonight, where we're really going to be focusing on the land use chapter. After tonight, shortly after, my colleague Nick is going to be a dad, so he's going to have most of September off. But after that, we're hoping to come back to you in October to share with you the whole rest of the vision and directions volume, including the first draft, including any changes to the land use chapter we talk about this evening.
Okay.
So we're still on course to finish up the process by the end of the year. It'll give you time, I suppose, to take a little breather and work on the budget, at least at the board level. And then, potentially we can have a joint hearing of the board and the plan commission as soon as December to get this thing adopted.
Okay.
So that's where we're at on the process. The next thing I wanted to kind of talk about, any questions about that before I move on to the next?
I don't think so on the timeline.
Okay. So the next thing I did want to talk about are the landowner requests that we received for amendments to the future land use map. We got one during sort of, I guess, our normal amendment cycle in winter, and 2 more came after the June forum. And so I just want to walk through those, and they are going to be kind of trailing on screen here. The first request is a small one from the Whitty family to designate the 5.9, if you go to the next page, Nick, the 5.9 acre area at the east end of Whittywood Road, or Whittywood Lane, to neighborhood development to correspond with the rest of the land that they control on the north side of Whittywood in that area. That's the wooded parcel at the edge of the road. I know you. The plan slopes. Yeah, with slopes. The plan commission is as versed as anyone on this site. The suggestion was that it would facilitate the conveyance of that land along with the plat as opposed to being left as sort of a leftover. And that the Whitty family suggests that upon future approval of the plat, which is not what this is, that they would designate building envelopes to preserve that wooded slope area. So, I could, I think there's representatives from the Whittys here that could be available to answer questions. My suggestion, at least initially, based on my less experience in this area, would be to accept that request for a plan change for that 6 acre area.
Do you feel they would be buildable?
As I looked at the site, the only area that I think has a potential to be buildable would be closer to Hope Road. Yeah, it's otherwise pretty steeply sloped, area.
Why wasn't that originally put in?
Because we didn't feel it would be
Buildable.
built on.
Right.
Isn't there a pipeline or something?
Huh?
Isn't there a pipeline or something too? Am I thinking of something else? Thought there was something else.
Right in the concept.
That's correct. There is a buried pipeline in that area.
Closer to Hope Road, right?
Yep.
It crosses from the land up north of Hope Road, across Hope Road to the land south of Hope Road. It'd be the northern east corner.
Okay,
East corner.
here somewhere, right?
Where's the mouse?
Oh, I guess
You don't have trouble screen.
right in here
Yep,
somewhere.
right across there.
Kind of across.
He's trying to, yeah, there you go.
Oh, yeah, kind of across this corner, I think, somewhere in that region.
I think in the original plan when we brought it before us, it was talk of minimizing driveways onto the road. We allowed the old site there, that's another driveway.
So what do you see happening with that southern portion of that lot?
Well, there are a lot of different things I suppose could be, I think we have to take a look, like Mark said, about see what's really buildable, but I think regardless of what configurations you may have, we are still just basically stuck with the problem of not wanting to have this just be some remnant out there. So, that's really the problem we're hoping to resolve by the comp plan amendment. And then the other issues of, how many lots are available, where they can go, what the access is going to be, would kind of be our next hurdle. But, we need to know that we're able to, however we can configure things, that we're able to put all this land together and aren't going to have this just kind of remnant piece. And that's, I guess really all that we're hoping to accomplish by the comp plan amendment. And certainly all these other details are certainly going to have to be addressed as we move forward.
Doesn't necessarily need to put it in a neighborhood development anymore. Does he? If you wanted to sell off that area and move a lot over there, you could now. You could sell the land and you can buy the lot.
Yeah, but then we still only allow that lot to be 2 acres. For that residential.
Yeah, it would be, but then we have the rest of the remainder of the land. We'd have to buy all the land, and then whoever would have to buy all the land and then take off 2 acres
For the house
for the house.
and the rest,
And then the rest would be,
one or
right,
non-buildable.
right.
It could be like a park, couldn't it?
I suppose it could be dedicated as parkland.
Could be held in common by the lot owners in the subdivision.
Yeah. So I guess my question to the plan commission is, do you want to vote on these individually if you want them to be included in the change, or do you want to do it all at once when we're done?
My opinion, I think they should be done individually.
I would agree. So are there any other questions, comments on the Woody request south of Hope Road, east end of Woody Wood Lane? Do they want to include that in the neighborhood development area?
I just question what they're gonna get out of it if there's not buildable.
They're
That'd be
gonna
the
not
next
get
step.
stuck with it, is what they're saying. They could convey it somehow with this subdivision. You know, whether it was dedicated to the town or held jointly by the homeowners association, something. They just don't want to get stuck with it, right?
Yeah, our goal is that we don't want to sell or someone to purchase out of the 14 acres, 8 or 9 acres, and then say, we don't want the 6 acres or 5.9 of wooded land. And then we have all the land north of Hope and then a piece of 6 acres that is just sitting there.
Yeah.
And so what we're trying to do is make it marketable. So the entire piece of land south of Hope Road could be purchased by an individual. And then obviously that individual would be speaking to you as far as what they would like to do or what their ideas are regarding that wooded land. But it puts us in a precarious position because we can't sell it as a whole when it's zoned differently. So that's why we waited the year to present and put the time in January as we were instructed to follow the regulations.
How they use it if they want it. You have to redo it to recreation.
It was our understanding that at the planning committee meeting, when we would have a future concept plan like we presented before, a year ago, we had a plan with 11 lots, including the wooded land that went all the way to the town meeting until the town said, you don't have, the wooded land is not residential, it's agriculture. So that's when we came back and said, okay, well, we'll wait until January. We'll put in for the comprehensive plan to see for you to approve this. So then it can now be all residential. So then when we're able to list it and sell it to an individual, it's all the same. And then they will have the ability to, to talk to you about different options. Because before we couldn't do that. And we knew from Mr. Hampton that we had to wait. At that time, it was March. We had to wait until the following February or January, February to put in any comprehensive change. So this has been a very long process for us, but we've followed the timelines and that's why we're here now.
Can they get more than one lot in
What was that?
there? Can they get more than one lot in there?
Well, I think
It's how somebody wants to know that they want to build, have a cave. We could.
To me, that's, what sticks out to me is that neighborhood development is where you get your multiplier. Is the multiplier applicable in that area? Am I wrong in saying that?
Well, it's right next to other neighborhood developments, so.
Yeah.
I would think it would be.
But that's what
It's just how you're going to end up using that steep sloped side.
right. So what I wouldn't want to convey to the Whitties is that, yeah, we're going to put that in neighborhood development, not a problem. And then when it comes down, you start laying out the land where you're going to put your lot or lots, there's a problem.
All it means is that that whole area, if that's also colored, that goldenrod color, just like what's adjacent, it just means that they can use that whole area for lots, but they still have to be a good place for a lot.
Yeah, it has to be approved to do the next step anyway.
Yeah.
Tonight, we don't even need to know that.
Yeah, and I think that, that I don't think, from my understanding of going through this process, tonight is the night to approve this part. And then, we could be, or the future owner could be very creative on how that piece of wooded land could have a lot there or not. But that is for a future meeting, not this meeting.
There are, you can barely see it from the map on the screen, but there are slopes of 20% or more as you head east and southeast from the end of Woodywood Lane that by town plan policy and, likely regulation would not be developable. But like I said earlier, the slopes moderate as you head towards Hope Road, and there might be an opportunity closer to Hope Road.
And I think that our last time, if you can remember, we looked at 8 lots. The 2 farthest lots east one was hitting Hope Road and one was hitting Woodywood Lane. And if anything, in our process of ideas is those 2 lots could then have extensions, and the owners of those 2 lots would have rights to half of that wooded lot. So if you buy the northeast lot, you get 3 acres of wooded land. If you buy the southeast lot, you get the other 3 acres of wooded land. Not to develop, but that is part of the lot.
Yeah.
And that is much more obviously beneficial for us trying to sell it when we know that wooded lot is included in lots. Let's say it was lot 4 and lot
And you
5.
got somebody that's going to take care of
If it was just, we couldn't sell it combined. So that's why we wanted it to be sold as one, under the same zoning code.
So we'll suggest we handle these one at a time. That's if we want to include the request from the Whitties for the east end of Woodywood Lane being added to neighborhood development. Is there a motion?
Make a motion to add the 5.9 acres that's listed in red, the east end of the neighborhood development.
Motion by Myler, is there a second?
Second by Anders.
You're too late. Mark beat you to it. So the motion was add the 5.9 acres to neighborhood development from the east end of Woodywood Lane. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed,
Aye.
same.
Nope, I'm an aye, sorry.
Okay, motion carried. Then the next one is the Sprecher request, Crest Farmland, Yankee Road.
Thank you. Good question. When is the next planning committee meeting?
September.
It's still the 3rd,
22nd,
Wednesday?
9/22.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. The next request was from John Sprecher for the Oak Crest Farmland, which is east of Violet Hook Road and south of the Door Creek Golf Course. And the request, as I understand it, is to redesignate the western part of the farm, about 116 acres, for neighborhood development for potential future residential. The landowner owns another 80 acres on the east end, and Nick's circling it right now, that isn't proposed for any change. The area is largely open today. Lands to the north, east, south, and west are currently planned ag preservation map. There's relatively few nearby homes and no subdivisions nearby. And the way I understand access is that the farm is about a quarter mile east of Vilas Hope Road. And the lands between it and Vilas Hope Road are, largely undeveloped with a few scattered home sites. The lands also have some land on them or other lowlands that you can kind of see when you look at the photo map.
Most of it wet or hydric soil?
Yeah, most of it is hydric soil. We are not suggesting that the map be changed for this particular request at this time. We do note that given the size of the farm and the lack of splits that have been divided from it, there's probably residential density units still on it, whereby a few homes could be subdivided without any change to the map. And further, if there was a desire for more than that few, as we discussed earlier, the town plan was amended last year to allow one-to-one transfers from better farmland to worse. That could apply here, I suppose. So the door, even without a plan change, wouldn't be shut for, some housing on this farm. But, a large-scale subdivision would not be possible.
Is John Spricker online?
No, he's not. He emailed me that he was not to go.
Okay,
And he has seen this recommendation.
okay. Questions from the Plan Commission? Any action that you would like to take? I would make a motion that we not change the designation to neighborhood development, that we leave it in the ag preservation area. There's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Troy, motion by Hampton to leave it in the ag preservation area. Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Next one, we have Houston's request east of Highway N near Nora Road.
Right, the Dale and Dwight Houston have requested plan changes from the ag preservation area to the commercial development area for two areas in the town. The one is to the south of us here along N and Nora Road. That equals about 177 plus or minus acres. And there's a second one that I'll talk about when we get to that one in a section further south of Highway 1218, near the south edge of the towns on either side of that. The map that Nick has up on screen show these two areas outlined in red. The northern area would surround a 60-acre piece of land that Houston's own already. Is currently undeveloped in soybeans right now. The suggestion that I would offer would be that the 40 acres between that and here, in other words, between the town police station and the fire station, would be redesignated for commercial development, as it's partially developed that way already. And it's surrounded on a few sides by either commercial use or planned commercial use or certainly non-residential use. That would leave the Houston's with about 100 acres that would be planned for commercial use in this vicinity. My suggestion would be to see how those areas evolve and develop before designating more area for commercial use.
So you're saying just take that first 40 that is on the corner of Nora and N.
Right.
And leave the rest for a later determination.
Right.
See how that 40 would develop first.
That 40 plus the 60, below it, that's already designated commercial development area.
Yes.
The 40 is also, if you look at the future land use map, has I think the least limitations for commercial use. It's relatively flat. It's on N, busier
You won't get
street.
any access off of N, that's off of Nora.
That is true, but you have visibility from
Yeah.
N and, a half a block to get back there.
Right.
So it seems to me on its face to be the most promising area for commercial use. It's possible, depending on the type of user, that it could occupy the whole piece of land, thereby not requiring a land division, thereby requiring no ET review, which is interesting.
Yeah.
But if it were to be subdivided, it would, kick it into Village of Cottage Grove, ETJ territory.
Question.
Mr. Richardson.
So future land use plan, so this is realistically, how far out is this, 10-year, 20-year?
20.
Yeah, it's a 20-year plan that's updated at least once every 10 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
And these land parcels don't get zoning changed. It's just the concept. It's just, if someone wants to develop or wants to pick up a plan and look, it just makes it easier for that developer to sell his idea of, they would still have to go through a zoning change and all that process. So I guess with that being said, if you got a landowner that is open to that concept, you've already got commercial both sides of the road, north, south, east, and west. There's an interchange there. Granted, it's a short piece of Nora Road, but you could easily stub both ways, and who knows what the county will and won't allow for highway access, to be honest. You could approach them on that. We've approached them on accesses for things in the past. We've been able to work with them. So I guess I don't see what all this does is, you've got no other nice commercial corridor. Well, you got a commercial corridor over by AB that the county happens to own, big chunk of that. They got an interchange. They're talking about going through there. You're not going to have a commercial corridor there shortly, right? I mean, realistically. So where else are you going to put commercial in the township?
North Star Road.
Right.
That's a different concept. That's a different concept down there to what you got here on.
Right, and we thought too about adding to that commercial area too there with the other parcel down below.
Yeah.
Granted, we don't own all that land down there, but just thought of a major interchange there. We can talk about that next. But as far as this upper part, it seems like a slam dunk. Why wouldn't you block that area off? It's not going to change from a farm field right now.
One of the things that affects us is we're very close to 80% ratio for farmland preservation. If we get below that, everybody in the township would lose farmland preservation rights. And if we take this out of ag preservation and put it all in commercial development.
But you're not doing that right now. It's just.
Well, that's what you're asking us to do.
Well, it's just a color on the paper now.
It would have to be, the county would require it be rezoned away from ag preservation, one of the FP1 districts.
To develop it.
No,
If we turn this red,
You turn it red right now?
the county would initiate a rezoning request to redesignate it from.
It would have to be rezoned right away.
Correct.
It would.
not to
yes.
commercial, it would probably go
To
to
ag transition,
ag
A
transition.
transition.
but it would no longer be eligible for tax, ag preservation tax credits in that case. If that's an important thing for you.
as far as what Chris is saying, if it's not farmland preservation, then it takes away from the denominator, not the numerator, right?
Yeah.
So it doesn't really threaten your 80% because now it's 80% of what you have in
Lots of a
farmland
pie.
preservation.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
true.
the pie's smaller, exactly.
That is true. Yeah, my rationale was more as you head east on Nora Road, the character of the land changes a little bit. It becomes a little bit more rolling. It's on a, more of a rural town road with, less suitability for traffic today. And
It's a rustic road.
and it turns into a rustic, you're right.
Once you make,
before the rest.
yeah, right, once you make
This
the
is flat.
curve,
Yeah.
you make it, but this is all before that.
Right. You're only taking 40 acres. That's,
The
the
eastern
house.
part, where it says town has frontage on that rustic road portion.
yeah.
Right. Yeah, our vision you wouldn't be tapping out to there for any access, right? It would come to the north, to Nora, or out to end,
Inside the boundaries.
right? There'd be some type of roadway set up inside of there. I don't know, there has been some bigger commercial people that in the 20-some years I've been with the Houstons have every once in a while come in looking for a big chunk of land. Lumberyard, that, distribution center, that type of thing. So there is the possibility that one person could come in and want. And if it's not shown on a map when they first do their initial look,
They give up.
it's hard to get the word out there that there is stuff available.
Are these users wanting more than 38 or 60 acres of land?
Yes.
And those users don't usually need a lot of utilities. Which is.
Questions from the planning commission? Directions from the planning commission?
I have a question.
So you mentioned something. Go ahead.
Am I up?
Yep.
Okay. The question I had, probably this is primarily for Mark. Let's say the scenario plays out like, I don't know who was just doing the talking because I can't see the back of the head. Anyway, what happens if someone does, say, approach the town or the Houstons or anybody for that matter, and say you have a 40 to 60 acre development for something big, something non-intrusive, something the town may have interest in, are we going to have to say no in order to keep from going over that magic 80%? Or are we going to have time to maybe undesignate some other areas to bring us back down below that magic number again?
The only challenge you would have is if the land stayed in ag preservation and you started to zone it something else that wasn't farmland preservation. So that
80% is only 80% of what's green.
right.
So once you color it red or pink or whatever, then it doesn't come in, it's not 80% of that anymore. It comes off the denominator.
Correct, I understand that. But do we potentially say to any potential big operation that we can't help you because we may end up having to, we don't want to redesignate green to pink or red or whatever color it is because of the fact we don't want to lose farmland preservation?
I think the argument is that you might lose that user if they see that the town plan doesn't show it as commercial. They might find a better site where they don't have to push a boulder uphill.
But how many times have we modified our plan for people in the past? And this is for everybody. We've done that a lot since I've been on the plan commission.
That's what we're trying to fix.
Yeah.
And I understand that. I understand that. But none of us has a crystal ball. None of us really knows what's sitting out there to potentially want to come in here. And I just don't want to, for all intents and purposes, permanently shut the door because we're approaching that magic number. If we do decide to redesignate some ag land to future commercial development.
I don't think you would be jeopardizing that if you did this. I mean, I'm not recommending it, but I just want to make sure all the facts are out there. I don't think it affects.
Actually help that,
It would
right?
probably help the issue and get you
Yeah.
farther above 80%.
Any other questions, Steve?
No.
Troy had?
You mentioned some about North Star development area. You mentioned it's a different concept. Can you, what are your thoughts?
I just, you got a highway end, the state highway, that is not a township road, not needed to interchange to get off of. You've got access off of a state highway. That's opens up for bigger uses.
Sure.
I think. Now, I like when Dwayne's, I'm all for that. There's place for that user too. The 1 acre, the 2 acre, but that is a different user. You're not going to get a user down there that's going to rely on the interstate with the semis for a distribution point or a drop over. But it's still needed, still needed. So when I say this north or the south project here, that is a project that is not going to tax your streets or a different user. It's 5 minutes or 2 minutes off the interstate. Boom, you're right there. So it's a altogether different type of distribution. People coming in and then being distributed and going out to the city.
Yeah, and I wouldn't disagree with that at all.
And that's why I say it's altogether different.
We have that access all the way along from the interchange here of 1218 and Highway N going north, all the way along there. It's shown in the map there that could be used in the same basically kind of concept that you're talking about, if we can get access to Nora Road, or I'm sorry, to Highway N.
Exactly.
So that's why we focused on that area having the commercial.
Yep.
Dennis, would there be any problems? I know from N to the east along Nora Road, there isn't much slope for drainage. If you have a lot of roofs, is that going to be a problem?
Well, you got detention. Everybody's got to make detention ponds these days, so they'd have to have their own on-site detention or maybe even underground detention. I mean, that's the way that these bigger commercial lots go, these FedEx sites and all that. A lot of them put it all underground now. So then you can get away with flat, and they like flatter stuff with their semis anyways. This one site we're looking at now is 2.5% is their maximum that they'll do on any of their sites. So, yeah, nice flat area like that. Granted, it starts to come up on the backside, but they probably steal dirt if they need to build up for their building a little bit. But yeah, no, that works out great, the flatter.
I think they did the gas station on the interstate down there. They put in that's all underground, right underneath the parking lot. It was all of it goes in there and then it goes out.
How does your traffic get to 94 now? Do you work through the village to get there, or?
We try not to.
Yeah.
Evidently not, if he's gonna do it in 2 minutes.
I heard him say 2 minutes ago.
That's the difference. I think we're mixing up two sites, and I think it's a wise idea to stick to the north one, and then we can handle the south one later. I think you were referring to getting to the in Pleasant Springs interchange. Going south. Yeah.
Most of our traffic is coming from the north, they'll come down 12 and 18 and into our place instead of going through the village. It's quicker, easier.
There's always it's
So action on the 177 acres. And in Nora Road. Is there a motion of one form or another?
Mark, what was your recommendation again?
My recommendation was to redesignate the 40 acres northeast of Nora and to commercial development.
Nick, can you circle the area that you're talking about on some map for everybody to make sure everybody realizes which 40 of that you're talking
You could
about?
bring up the future land use map, Nick, from our proposal because it's shown that way too on that. So here we sit right here. It would be this 40 plus the 3 lots that they don't own, but I think are in, well, one of them's the police station and one's kind of in got a house and maybe a big commercial building behind it.
It's all commercial. That only goes to, I mean, it's flat all the way to Nora Road. Drop-off takes off. It's flat all the way.
Okay. That was, you asked the question, that was my, that was the recommendation.
There's no grade change from here to here.
So this year you're recommending stay in ag?
No.
That's already designated for future commercial use. The Houston Farms piece, 60 acres southeast.
How about this year?
Yeah, we asked for this
Yeah.
and this.
Yeah.
And then we asked for
This
this
here.
and this.
Right.
I would suggest if you guys are really dead against this, oops. If you're really dead against this stuff here, why wouldn't you include at least, if you're gonna do this piece too at least? Then you've got all the end frontage covered.
You know, I don't have a particular strong opinion one way or the other, except that the land directly across N is planned for housing.
There's a single house there, yeah, right, that's down off the road, kind of steep down there.
Currently, but yeah, as you would be discussed, the future plan suggests that that would be maybe a subdivision on the other side of the road. That was my opinion.
You can look down on the roofs.
Which road, which house is that?
That little house, very first house as you're going up the hill to the right.
Oh,
Stalemate.
I don't have a problem. Really
Big,
want to
big drive.
It's 40 is.
We would like to have everything that's in our red thing there, but
177.
right. That's what we would really like to have, so that when the potential buyer comes to town, he sees he's got a big plot of land to work with.
It's kind of the whole idea of the future land use is trying to crystal ball as much as you can.
Yeah.
You know, as best you can, and that's our best guess.
The tension is that as you head east, the vision that we've heard from the town and property owners is for agricultural preservation. Now, where is east? You know, that's a fuzzy line.
Yeah, until you talk to the farmers.
Well, we're thinking of commercial, we're not thinking of housing, and there is a lot of housing going up in the township, a lot.
And this is the gut of the township. This isn't the eastern part of the township.
I mean, you get past, you go farther east, there's a lot of houses. We're not here talking about subdivisions or.
Looking for a motion either on the 40 or the 177 acres.
I'll make a motion to follow Mark's recommendation for the 40 acres.
Motion by Troy, second by Myler to do only the 40 acres to the north. The north 40 along Penn and Nora Road. Current hayfield. Discussion on the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Aye, opposed, Anders.
Motion carried 5-1. Now we're at the south end of N and 12 and 18.
Nick, can you zoom on that, please? Thank you. So the second part of the request from the Houstons is to redesignate about 300 acres, mostly southeast of the Highway 12 and interchange from ag preservation to commercial. There's a small piece on the west side of N, about 40 acres, yeah. That would also be redesignated under the proposal. And, you know, as you all know, the interchange area in general has been identified as a future commercial development area for the town. It's away from the influence of the city and the village to a significant degree. It's on an, you know, bona fide interchange with access, good access in all directions. What's easy to forget, and, you know, it was important to remind us, is that the interstate interchange of N is just about 2 miles south of this interchange. So it's got easy access to the regional network, you know, Chicago area, et cetera. I took a look at Pleasant Springs plan for the lands to the south, which, you know, suggests the potential for some rural commercial development, they've got it more classified for family-based businesses as opposed to larger scale businesses. But anyway, it's not incompatible with commercial use here, certainly. So, you know, there's enough of an interesting idea here to, I think, warrant further investigation. At the same time, I don't know that the town should amend its comprehensive plan right now to color it pink. The reasons I suggest that are a few. First, I do think it requires, you know, some more intergovernmental discussion than we perhaps have time for as part of this process. With Pleasant Springs, with the county, with the state, you know, in particular on land use and access issues and sort of compatibility of uses. There are a number of property owners in this area that are not the Houstons that haven't been invited to the table just yet. And I would think if we were doing a process similar to what we did for North Star Road, we would want to include them in the picture. As you head north, in particular in this area, the topography gets a little steeper. You can sort of see that with again, the hatched areas on the map. Less conducive to commercial unless you get a big backhoe, which I know these guys do. And there's also, you know, on the range of 10 to 15 homes. And, you know, one of the reasons we had previously identified North Star as a place for commercial development is that there was one. Yeah, so very little residential development to potentially create, you know, incompatibilities and noise issues and whatever it might be. So for those reasons, what I have proposed is that it be designated as not a change area for now, but an area for intergovernmental study that we would potentially, as a town, pursue a process similar to what has been undertaken for North Star Road. It could lead to a detailed plan and a plan amendment or not, depending on the resolution of the intergovernmental, interproperty owner, land use and other factors. So, my suggestion is, I guess, are two. The first one is to not change the plan at this time. And we can talk about how we kind of treated it in the draft plan document that we're going to look at a little later, but to designate it as a study area to put on our to-do list for the near future after the plan is adopted. And then that could be ranked later on. We'll have a process in our, like we did in 2015, where there's 10 or 15 different, potential issues that the town may work on over the next 5 to 10 years. And we ask you to prioritize, those issues, among what's more important, this or any of a number of things that could be in the plan.
My only thought at this time, the only thing I would be interested in changing would be, I think, the 32 acres to the east of and where Connery is and where the old dairy used to be, to include that entire 40 would be all that I would consider at this point to change to commercial. I would leave everything else ag preservation.
What is the rest of that all owned by the county?
That 32 acres, yes.
That's owned by the county.
Son of a gun, they do own that. I wish not for long.
Can you include more to the east of that, Chris? The land that I own behind the county? That's all right. That's all right. That can be later discussion.
I guess I wouldn't. That portion of North Star Road we haven't done anything with. I'd bite that off at this point.
That's fine.
I think it would be easier to maybe do that 32 acres with one of the 2 access points that we already have on end to get into that acreage, and then could look at the land to the east later if we so needed to.
Where's his land to the east?
Here.
Pretty much due east, yeah.
That's just my thought.
That's
Since you got Connery and commercial there already. You have the one house that's in the middle of it, but it's been there since everything else has been there, so nothing new to them.
Connery owns it.
Yeah. Comments, questions, action?
It wouldn't be too bad of an idea then to add the county's land in there?
That was my thought, because you already have commercial here and here.
But you guys bought some of the county land, correct? And then added on to your commercial?
Yeah, 3 acres or something it was. Thank you.
So. It might not be, I mean, it's existing, they could add on. That'd be the worst thing.
Yeah.
I take it you're never gonna level that site and do something else with it.
Be commercial.
Right.
It's a perfect, Highway N is pretty good artery for the township for.
And this land we're talking about right here, this chunk of this, in my opinion, where the county is, that's really decent. You got just a short drive to get to 12 and 18. You got a short drive to the interstate.
Yeah.
And you've got a township to the south of you that wants commercial developed in that area.
Action? Someone, wait,
How many acres are 32 acres?
I think there's 32 acres. I show that entire 40 as
Yeah.
being
I just,
commercial.
I think what you're saying is, basically all this,
Yeah.
the two that are sites that are already zoned commercial plus the county land.
Yeah. To me, that would make sense for. Not that we couldn't always add more later, but if we need to.
Well, I think about when I think of this, I think, well, it's county land. Did they pull material out of that land, any clay out? Is there still some of that clay in there that they could use it?
Yeah, that's why they are refusing to sell. The clay that they took was all from down in here.
Yep. And there's probably more clay in here, you think?
Well, that's what they say, that there's a couple of feet of clay up here.
Okay. It's not like they're gonna build any houses or anything in there, or anything like that. But, going back to our plan, we talked about the North Star and that being our development area. I understand their position.
And I would say, if we didn't have the two commercial properties there already, it probably wouldn't be for it, but you already have commercial there, so.
Right.
Just make the whole 40 commercial, you got access that you could use. Because you probably won't get any more access points off of it. It'd be hard to pull.
So let's keep moving on.
Buddy.
Make a motion. How much land are we talking now?
Here, that 32 would be that entire 40 into commercial. Is that your motion?
Sure.
Is there a second? Second by Mr. Klinger to include the 40 southeast boundary of the township into commercial development area. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Moving on.
Thank you, Mark, very much.
So we're beyond the three requests now, and I wanted to just try to quickly go through one of the things in your packet that sort of influenced the future land use map, and we touched up the land use chapter or the vision or the conditions and issues volume, and pointed to a couple things there that I think you have in your packet. So it's confusingly issued. They're both called land use, but if you look at the bottom, one of them says conditions and issues.
Page 23.
and page 23. That's the one I'm on right now. And so I don't want to take you through all this. I just want to highlight some new information that came out after we met in June. So on page 25, there's a new section called Compliance with Farmland Preservation Planning and Zoning Rules. This is as clear as we could get in describing where you're at right now on this whole issue. The town of Cottage, it says right here, Dane County estimates that the town of Cottage Grove has 82.59% of its planned agricultural area zoned within a certified farmland preservation zoning district, either FP 35 or FP 1. And that this percentage decreases every time any land in the ag preservation is rezoned from one of those districts. And and then it goes on to say state, or the chapter says state rules say, if you get below 70, you get in a naughty zone, and you sort of get put on probation, I suppose. And and then they say below 70 is not allowed. So the goal to stay out of that naughty zone would be to keep it above 80%. We'll talk about ways to do that. But on the next page, you might remember that we identified a handful, this figure 5.2, a handful of areas that seem to be used and zoned a lot differently than the ag preservation area classification would suggest. And so what we did when we get to this future land use map is for the areas that are highlighted in gold on this table, we suggested a change away from agricultural preservation area to, one or more classifications, often neighborhood development area, but not always.
On this one?
On the future land use map.
This one here.
Yeah, but you're referring to this map.
Yeah, Mike, I didn't wear my glasses here. That's the existing land use map. So that's just a resource that we use for current land use. I'm kind of.
So when you're talking about Sunset Ridge, it's in this existing land use map as residential.
But
Yeah.
it's not planned for residential.
Not currently.
It's planned, it's in the ag preservation
Yeah, so
planning district.
if you turn around and look at the map as it currently exists behind you, it's in an ag preservation area.
And so those all count against your farmland preservation.
So, we can keep this in the back of our heads, but as we go look at the future land use map changes, coming up real soon, I promise, the areas in gold is where I'm suggesting that we change them.
Did you say what the suggestion was to change to? Well, it's right there.
Yeah, it'll be on this if you.
It's because they're shaded, it's how they're shaded, right?
Yeah, I shaded it to telegraph that those are the areas we did change. Yeah, it's a little confusing. This isn't going to be in the separate volume. It's sort of like the analysis. But
because they're shaded the same color as neighborhood development on the future land use map, those are the ones that you intend to.
I think they're almost all, but except for the golf course. But yeah, so we'll get to that.
One quick little note, Loudon Road doesn't have an N in it.
Okay, Nick, you got that?
Yep.
The other thing that I wanted to just point out as new information is that we asked and received from the county on page 28, the lands with legal development restrictions. Do you remember we had a previous version of that map that just had circles? And one of the requests was, well, could you just show us the parcels, the actual parcels that have restrictions on them? And they did that. So, this signals to us that there have been a lot more land use restrictions limiting development, on the east side of the town compared to the west side. And that influences our future land use map to a degree. So this is a great resource to use going forward.
So you had green on here, prohibited land division.
Yeah.
And you have prohibited development. What are the two differences?
I can find that. That's a good question. I'll have them. I'll have definitions of each of these.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was You don't know what other was?
Yeah, no, I'm sorry.
That's fine.
I'll work harder to get those defined for you. So it's not as fun to look at as a map, but the other pieces of information that I have that are relatively new here are on page 31 of this document and trickling over into page 32. And I'll just, explain this. You can read it yourself, but we did a demand forecast for future land use. And through 2045, we estimated that the town may require about 500 acres of undeveloped land for new rural house lots and about 500 acres of undeveloped land for new commercial development, give or take. We look at the supply on the map, the current map that's behind you, Chris, right now, and how much do we actually have available? Well, for residential, we have 600 plus or minus acres designated that are undeveloped, but don't have restrictions.
Only 259 RDUs, approximately.
Well, this is the gold area now. In the gold area, we've got about 600 acres. But a lot of those are directly adjacent to the village,
right?
Especially in the Gaston Road area, and the likelihood of them remaining in the town is, probably relatively low.
Landowner?
Yeah. So, if we really have maybe 400 acres in gold on the map now that's undeveloped and available for development. So that might suggest that, we could find, 100, 150, these are all round numbers of additional areas to potentially mark in gold, on the map. That does sort of ignore the fact that we still have some splits remaining in the green areas on the map, the egg preservation area. So a gentleman at our June meeting asked me the question, well, how many are left? And so Nick and I did a real basic analysis. You can read how we did it and we can explain more, but the upshot was we think about 44% of the splits have been used and about 56 are left to use in the egg preservation area.
About 260.
Yeah, right. And that's where the 260 number comes from. That's 260 RDUs that are, spread in the egg preservation area.
Yeah.
So that tells us that, we don't, if we want to accommodate demand, we don't have to color half the town gold.
Right.
But, we have some room to play with that a little bit. And then for commercial, we have a similar kind of issue where, just by coincidence, we have about 600 undeveloped but developable acres that are planned for commercial use. But about 250 of those are right next door to the city of Madison and the village of McFarland. So if you make the same assumption that, not a lot of those are going to develop commercially in the town, we have maybe 350 to 375 acres of available commercial land that's planned. Now that's ever changing based on our conversation tonight. But again, it's maybe 125, 150 fewer than what we would need over the next 20 some years. So that suggests that it does make sense for the town to kind of look forward and identify where the future best spots for additional commercial use. So, I mean, the Houston's request is a very useful exercise in that regard to get us to look forward. So, to me, as your planner, it doesn't suggest that we should designate 600 additional acres for commercial use. But it does make sense to plan accordingly. And it is true, that there are big fish out there. You don't land them very often at all, but that they do increasingly demand more and more acres at a time. So just bottom line is that, I think, we don't have to radically change our future land use map, either to kind of address the vision of the town residents, at least as I understood them through the survey and to an extent through the relatively few comments we got out of notifying every large property owner of what we were up to. that, to me, people think we're generally on the right course. But at the same time, there's rooms for tweaks and adjustments to the future land use map. So thanks for bearing with me. It's been a long meeting already, but that's why I brought this information forward, to kind of provide a little update on the data. The big thing that I have, and I just happen to have a large size version of it because it's the other one that's called land use, where the first page is number 17. And that's from the vision and directions volume. So again, not to be too confusing, but this is the proposed first draft of the rewrite of the land use chapter, the one that you as the plan commission look at, 95% of the time compared to the other parts of the plan. So what we did within this particular chapter is a few things that you see that are changes. We're going to talk about the future land use map changes in a little bit, but I'll get to those. Maybe we'll do those last, and then we can be done. We included, and we're going to try to do this with your permission, include some of the results from the survey in here to kind of support and justify some of the recommendations. So we definitely had a lot of questions about future land use within the survey, where they thought different forms of development, what should the priorities be versus ag preservation, natural area preservation, commercial, residential, which I think informs the plan, a little bit. So we've got that kind of thing. It's in the box on the first page. It's on the graphic that I thought was, informative. If you remember from the spring when we shared the survey results, on the second page labeled page 18. So that's one area of change. The other area of change that I'd like to direct you guys to is on page 22. Excuse me. And we've got this concept that, I racked my brain as to what we're going to call this, but I ended up calling it intergovernmental study areas. So I've got two I don't have them mapped, and that's intentional. One of them, it corresponds with the area that you guys are talking with the city of Madison on. And, my feeling, as if we look at the future land use map, is that we should just pause in that area as a town, let the negotiations proceed with the city, and when they end, then plans can change accordingly within that particular area. So
Try and be done with it before the end of the year.
Yeah, that would be, well, we can talk, and then we can talk at the end here about timing, because, and Chris and Kim and I talked about this a little bit, is that, there's a question as to, we can, deliver much of the plan. We can, have a discussion in October, but one argument is, does it make sense then just to set the plan aside, let the negotiations with the city come to conclusion, and then amend the comprehensive plan to reflect those negotiations? The alternative is that we may be, here next summer talking about a lot of plan amendments, in that area to address the plan, the intergovernmental boundary agreement. So right now, and so right, that information on page 22 is kind of written with the assumption that we would just charge forward with this comprehensive plan document. If we decide not to, then we probably just yank that out of there and write other things to reflect the then existing intergovernmental agreement with Madison. And the second area that, that I listed, I already mentioned with respect to the Houstons, is whether, the idea, there's merit to a lot of the ideas they had for the area south of Highway 12 on N, but there's definitely drawbacks. And, I think it would require a lot of talking with the property owners in the area, with the county, with the town of Pleasant Springs, before, moving forward on any land use change. So the second intergovernmental study area is that zone, if you will, that would be the subject of something that, we could do in 2022, or in 2028 or at some future date to explore whether the plan ought to be changed in a bigger way than what you just recommended here tonight. That's the second, bigger thing. The good news I can tell you about all these tables at the end is that we've spent so much time tweaking them every year that we've got them down pretty good, I think. That one thing that I did want to point out, I guess there's two things that I'll point out. One of them is on page 29. And there was a section of, I guess, the 2011 town plan and previous plans that got dropped somewhere along the way. And under farm residences 2A on page 29. So this is the issue about separation of farm residences. Usually requires an RDU. And as I understand it, it should be restored except in cases of separation of the original farm residence from the 1982 parcel, where the farm has been under contiguous single ownership since May 5th, 1982. That was once in the plan, or language to that effect was once in the plan. It got removed from the plan, and I think you had an issue that came up last year.
So there was, if I remember right, I think 2010 was like a sunset cutoff, and after 2010, it was supposed to require an RDU to split a farmhouse off. And it was that way in our plan from like 2010 until you took over, whatever that was. Then it went back to, it didn't require one. And that was confusing for a while. And so what we want, or what you guys want, is that it does, right?
Require an RDU.
In all cases.
Yes.
Okay.
Because anything after 2010 was supposed to, but then we had that little.
And we're after 2010 now, obviously.
Yeah, we had that little glitch in there.
So you think the sentence that I'm focused in on, that Nick has, I think he's got it highlighted, so you know where it is, that it should just end at 1 RDU per figure 3, period?
Farm residents built before me. It should count against the density policy, right?
Well, that's the question. Does it count against the density policy only when it's separated from the rest of the farm, or does it count?
I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yes, to separate it, they need an RDU. That's
okay. So the first sentence is probably okay, and maybe I need to clarify that, because if you're confused by it, Kim, then other people would be too.
So after it would say figures 3, period, and then.
Like when the county does a density study,
right?
Do they count? They count the original farmhouse. Don't they?
It depends on what the town plan policy says. They'll count it
Is that what this is saying? As if it hasn't been divided, do we want it to be counted in a density study? Is that what that first sentence has got to do with?
Yeah, the first sentence is not changed from the current town plan.
Okay.
Where the changes start are in the second sentence, and I may have misunderstood what I was supposed to do. It's entirely possible.
No, I think you're right. I'm stuck on the first sentence. I guess it does not count against this density policy.
Yeah, and you could add, as long as it's not separated from the 1982 farm.
Yeah.
To make that clearer. Yeah.
Do you need any of that? Because any farm residence that you're going to separate now, you have to have an RDU.
Right. Well, yeah, you're saying you could cross out the first sentence, and then you could just have the second sentence read, separation of a farm residence from a 1982 parcel requires use of 1 RDU per figure 3, period.
Why do you need that? Anytime you separate it, you would need one. There's no exceptions any longer.
So I would just say that some towns never count the farm residence as an RDU or requiring a split, whether it's separated or not. And so that writing it in would make it clear what your town treats
We
it.
do require an RDU now if you're going to separate.
Yeah. So I would say you would want to write that in. But there seems to be a lot of extra language there in 2A right now that doesn't need to be there. So it's, let me take a crack at rewriting that.
Yeah.
I think I understand the intent. And you'll see this again in 2 months. The only other change of note on these tables relates to something I'm proposing to do with the open space and recreation area future land use designation. Right now, that designation is mapped only over about 160 acres along BB east of the village. That's right. I am proposing, and then maybe I should start talking about the land use map, but I'm proposing, and this is, I'm sorry, I'll show you, I'm on page 31, figure 7. I'm proposing that we might also use it over the Door Creek Golf Course. More reflective of that use, the use of that forest might help us a little bit with the 80% rule. And so I've expanded that a couple words in that figure 7 to say, provides recreational opportunities, recreational zoning might be appropriate, et cetera. So you can study that when you have more time. It's not a radical change to that, but it's just a tweak to allow that classification to be used for 2 different purposes, I suppose. Both kind of open space related. So let me then, you guys can sit with this, literally for 2 months and study it some more and bring your questions, in October.
No, I'm going to give you my questions now.
Oh, go for it, Chris.
On page 17.
Yep.
Under the objectives, number 3, you try to answer that in that green section, how we're going to balance.
Yeah.
I think it needs more help as to how hard that is to balance. The residents want us to save farmland. Farmers only want us to save it until they need to sell it.
Yeah.
And like that email that I sent you, we're not going to tell them what they can plant. Corn and soybeans are what make them money. But I don't know how to get that balance across to the general public.
Yeah.
So you'd like a little expansion of that objective and just explain the challenges associated with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
The challenges that this commission faces in trying to do that.
As far as somebody having a bad year with cropping and then being.
Well, in that survey, the residents want us to preserve farmland.
Yes.
But when we had the farmers in, they only wanted us to preserve it until they wanted to sell it.
Okay. I mean, that's what they're.
Because that's their retirement, it's their 401k, whatever.
Yeah.
So.
And there's nothing saying that they can't sell it. It's just saying that what the next move is, that's what's in question, what I see.
What they're going to use it for.
Right. The whole RDU concept is an example of compromise to reflect that balance.
Yeah.
I mean, the extreme end would say if it's farmland, you don't have anyone but the farmer living on that land. And the other end would be just let me do with what I want with it. I'm the owner. And you guys, and many other towns have found a middle ground that says for every 35 acres, you get, 1 house. That's an example of a compromise that involved the balance of landowner rights versus community interest in land.
Yeah, because otherwise we'd get that third party involved in deed restrictions that would hold it forever as farmland versus the county saying, well, once it's annexed, you do what you ever want.
Correct.
They didn't want us that had that third signature on those deed restrictions.
The farmers didn't? or-
Right.
Well, it's only if they wanted to. Wouldn't it be, they would be selling that deed restriction?
We'd make part of the rezone that they asked for that 2-acre lot that they wanted to sell.
Yeah.
Would say, okay, the remaining of that 35 acres is now deed restricted with county and whoever that third party would be.
Oh,
And they didn't want us to do that.
the landowners didn't.
Right.
Yeah, because if it's just a deed restriction that's, could be removed with annexation, then they're not giving up all that much.
Yeah.
If they, especially if they're close to a city or village.
You don't want to give up their options.
Yeah.
That's another example of a balance, right?
Right.
It's not, it's more or less a permanent restriction on land if you're on the east end of the town, because it's going to be generations and generations before any city or village would ever get out there. But it's not that big of a burden if you're right next to the village or city.
Yeah.
I thought that they were talking about buying that option. It would be, you would sign off, but you're gonna get money for it.
Well, that's
And
that's the trade-off, but
Yep.
then they're saying, okay, but someday, what if I annex and develop? I don't want to have it that if I annex, they can't develop it, because that ruins my value to sell it to whoever is looking at
Yeah,
it.
absolutely.
It remains farmland value rather than commercial or residential.
Right.
Yeah. I don't want to prolong this meeting, but when you want to hear my story about recent transfer development rights in the town of Springfield and a conservation easement, I think it's very interesting.
Okay.
And it was used there very strategically, not to block immediate annexation from Middleton, but thinking forward 50 years as to where Middleton might want to be. And they had a, farmer there that was willing to sell their rights in perpetuity with a third-party conservation organization, Harrow Pride Farms, that signed on to it, that, made it a forever restriction. So, anyway, it could have its purpose in a different way.
So then I would like to talk about our residential development units, our multiplier. When we originally put that in, we were told the thought was you could add $10,000 to a residential lot and tell them that you're preserving part of this 35 acres. Well, that's been 20 some years, so I'm wondering, how has that changed? Because I asked, like, Don Vinny, what's a 2-acre, no trees on the farm, what's he sell for? $170,000.
Yeah.
So how much can we now add to that residential lot in a subdivision? Is it still 10,000 or is it 20,000? Or what amount? I guess I want to get to, is that 8 multiplier still correct?
Mm-hmm.
Well, where do you think it should go?
I don't know if it should just stay the same or if it really needs to go or not. Because I don't, that $10,000 20 years ago that you could add, what is that in dollars now? Is that 25? 30?
Yeah, one of the reasons why he's gaining so much money for those lots is, you mentioned it's open land, right?
Yeah.
That's in an ag area. People want to be in the ag area. So when you hear that, okay, this is farmland, it's not going to get developed, people go, oh, really? I want that plot because I'm not going to have a bunch of neighbors around me. I'm willing to spend the money for it. And that's kind of where he's coming up with that. When it comes to neighborhood development, you may not quite get that. It's not saying you can't, but what is Dave Resop getting for his stuff? I think they're around 108 to 110 in there.
Yeah, 120 even, yeah.
Yeah.
So, but does it also play into your inventory a little bit and also into then does that just drive the price of an RDU up? That's the negotiation between the
The seller and the buyer.
the seller and the buyer, and you know, you gotta look at, you've got your 260 RDUs, some of them will get used one-to-one in the ag preservation area, others will be multiplied, and so
Right.
I don't know who's gonna do that math, but
Yeah.
where, how many do you want, you know, how many do you need to have? If you increase or decrease your multiplier, how does that affect the potential?
Yeah.
So it really depends on the buyer and the seller, I mean, a lot. If the seller might be, well, it's 175. That's how I'm gonna sell it because that's how much I can develop a lot. Or the seller is like, I don't want to have a neighbor.
Yeah.
Or I was never going to develop this RDU anyway. I might as well get less for it.
Gravy,
It's like
yeah.
gravy for me.
Yeah.
Or as you know, it could be an inside job. I mean, Don could transfer, split to side. I think he's done that, you know, before. And then there's no money that changes hands. You know, in this example in Springfield, it was 120. The price that got paid for a split was 120. And the person on the other end didn't have any rights left. And this, by their transfer system, enabled them to develop two. So they essentially added $60,000 to each of their two lots in that transaction and absorbed it. And they got something they didn't have the ability to do before.
What size lots were those?
2 acres, 2 or maybe 3. And they were nice. I mean, they're $200,000 lots. Yeah, they're wooded, hillside, fantastic view kind of stuff. So they were comfortable to add, you know, whatever to the price of those lots.
Mm-hmm.
So
Well, I guess I just wanted some feedback from you as to, are we still correct or do we need to modify something?
if you want as part of this process, I can think about that a little bit more and report back to you.
Yeah.
I'll do that.
Okay. And then on page 28 in the ag preservation area, on the new lot sizes.
Oh, yeah.
You know, we have a minimum lot size of 20,000 square feet, but then max is 2 acres, but if it's a new lot for a farm resident or farm buildings that existed as of May 15th, we don't have a maximum other than it was 10 acres. And I thought at one point, didn't we have it down to 5 or whatever was needed to encompass the buildings?
I don't remember that.
Well, that part's still there.
Okay.
It's encompass the buildings, but the 5 isn't in there. And I don't remember that, but that doesn't mean it wasn't there.
Yeah, that's not a change from the last version.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean you can't change it to something else. But the way I read this is that you're going to say, how many acres do you need to draw a box around the farm and the outbuildings? Well, that's the maximum for that particular lot. But if you have a farmstead and then outbuilding 500 feet this way, another outbuilding 500 feet in the opposite direction, you're not going to go greater than 10 acres to accommodate all those buildings. That's how I read this. But.
Well, then above that, it's talking about maximum lot size is 2 acres, except that the town board may approve a greater size due to unusual land configuration to better protect farmland for commercial uses and or enhance rural or scenic character. I didn't think commercial uses would have been a residential use.
Yeah, there's
wouldn't
a
it?
problem there. Yeah, because the preamble says for new lots intended for new residences.
Yeah.
And then it goes and says commercial uses.
So that commercial should say residential?
This doesn't need to be there.
It probably doesn't need to be there, right? I guess then you could have a separate policy for commercial uses that are permitted in in the ag preservation area, because there's a ag business zoning district
Yeah,
But the question then is, do you want a minimum or maximum lot size for those situations?
okay.
Right. Yeah. Right now, you don't have a maximum or a minimum.
And moving on to neighborhood development areas, it now says the minimum lot size is 20,000 square feet. Maximum lot size is an acre. Do we want to keep it at an acre, or is that too much?
Is it too big?
Yeah,
It's pretty small for a rural lot.
in a subdivision?
Yeah, I think, well, there's one theory, obviously, that if you're gonna develop a subdivision, you might as well put as many lots in there as possible. The other theory is that too many septic systems in a small area is a recipe for contamination of groundwater. So.
I'll have to have two potential sites too.
Yeah, they have to have the two sites.
For a drain field, alternative
Too
field.
small, you
Yeah.
limit how big of a house they'd have room for.
Saying you gotta have larger homes than you're building now.
Yeah.
So that's gonna,
What do you, in the new subdivisions, do you see people pushing up against that 1 acre all the time? Do you have a lot of 1 acre lots?
Yeah, I think most of them are at least an acre. You have a few odd shaped ones at the very end that are maybe a little bit bigger, but
Yeah,
most of them are all just under an acre.
right.
Scarson's, those were, of course, that's not neighborhood development.
No,
All right, so then Donnie's was neighborhood development. Vinnie's.
down here was,
They were
yeah,
over, they were 8/10 or were they 5?
Yeah.
other than the last two towards then, they were a little bigger, weren't they?
Yeah, the bottom two are, but
Yeah.
I think 8/10 comes to my mind too, something like that.
So that's telling me that the market wants to be close to an acre. And if you make it smaller, then you might be clamping down on the market a little bit. I think, I don't want to use more land than we need to either, but I think 1 acre is a pretty good maximum. Many towns have a bigger maximum in subdivisions.
Okay.
Talk about the map.
Oh, we want to talk about map?
Oh, yeah, well, if there are any other comments, I'd like to, I don't mean to shut down
I
conversation.
sent it to him.
Oh, okay. I thought he's done. My apologies.
Oh, if you need me to be done, we can be done and we can.
No,
Okay.
he was asking about that email that I sent to you
Oh, yeah,
from that.
yeah, I've got it.
Yeah.
So could we bring up the map, Nick, that has the comments on it? So I'm gonna talk about the future land use map changes. You can either look at the map version that's in that same chapter or this one. This one just has all the, did they have it, Kim, or?
Yeah.
Okay, it should be separate.
Oh,
Yeah. So this is the same one as in my draft chapter, but Nick and I just highlighted all the places that would be potentially changed, so you could see them with the note. So I'm gonna walk up to the screen because it's gonna be easier for you to tell where I am, except for Steve. Sorry, Steve. So there's a few different kind of categories of changes that we have here on this map. One category, one big one, was going back to that table with the gold rows in it that I was presenting from earlier. You guys still looking for the map? I'm sorry.
It was a single sheet.
That's done.
Yes, that one.
I think I've got one.
Yep, good, all right. So one of the sets of changes, first off, I guess pretty well as to the changes that would go to the map to reflect the comments, except for the one on the south end of the town for the Houstons. So that would change to pink too. But on this one, I've got the 40 acres just to the south of us here in commercial development, and the end of the Whitty Woodruff Road in neighborhood development. The other areas, what I try to do is get you, as one of my goals is to have the planned land use map better reflect the existing use of the land and the existing zoning of land in a few places. So where that kind of played out in particular was, you mentioned the name of the subdivision, I'm blanking on it.
Sunset Ridge.
Sunset Ridge. Change that area because it is a subdivision. It's already zoned residentially. It was seemingly created not from splits, but some other mechanism, not from RDUs, designated as what it is, a neighborhood development area. That helps us with the equation, this 80% equation. Similarly, we've got some lands in the BB Baxter Road area that are already zoned for residential development, but again, if you turn around and look at the map behind you, are currently shown in the ag preservation area. This would redesignate those lands that are used and zoned for housing as neighborhood development area. Wouldn't suggest, I'm going to talk about that little house symbol in a little bit, so bear with me on that. The third area where I'm proposing to do something similar is around the golf course, Door Creek Golf Course. If you look at the plan behind you, it's all ag preservation right now. Yeah. The golf course is, the lots along Hope Road are, the lots along BB are. But they're zoned all sorts of different things, mostly residential. So my proposal is to redesignate the golf course to this open space and recreation category. I think it reflects what it's used for a lot better. And I think it helps us with the ratio. And then redesignate the existing house lots. The only thing in addition to that is there is a tract of land that's about 15 to 20 acres behind or east of the lots on Hope Road, between those lots and the golf course. That, in my estimation, makes sense for a neighborhood development area in a way that could allow a small subdivision with transferred development rights.
It's that piece that was just sold by Strands. So somebody just
And the
bought
one
it.
house being built.
They're building a single family residence, but that doesn't mean that that might not be a good place to divide someday.
Yeah.
Put houses along the golf course or something.
Mm-hmm. The one thing that I have to look at is that I discovered this too late. It's also an area that's been deed restricted in some way.
Oh.
Yeah, so I have to investigate that further, so to see what that's all about. But those are some key things that are changes on the map. The other thing that I did down in the N12 area is designate areas commercial in a way that reflects that the totality of the neighborhood development plan we have in that area. So that ended up adding about 65 acres of land. I guess related to the Swalheim proposal, I grabbed, and then we can decide whether you want to do this, you're in charge. I grabbed the first 300 feet or so on the north side of that east-west North Star Road segment. Thinking that if that road's improved, that having commercial sites on both the north and the south side would make the best use of it.
True.
That's a little different than the plan. There was some in the area of Vilas Road, where we've got a number of subdivisions. There's a couple of infill pieces that were not currently designated for ag preservation or for neighborhood development that I suggest be designated that way. Again, if you turn around and look at the map behind you, you can see where those are. They are not zoned farmland preservation, so we wouldn't be jeopardizing any tax credits there. Along Coffeetown Road, the village has got an annexation brewing. This reflects that area, I think, as an ag transition area.
That goofy little shape isn't part of it.
The one that's sort of poking back into the
Yeah, but I mean, I think it would make sense to,
It's
sooner or
maybe
later, it probably will be, but
inevitable.
it's not part of this annexation.
Gotcha.
It would be kind of a
Kind of left out.
unusual island if you didn't.
And then I've got this, I'll talk about the black lines. The black lines reflect potential future roads or ideas for road connections. The ones in the North Star Road area are, basically a copy of the ones from that neighborhood plan. But the other areas are my musings and concepts for how roads might connect based on where they, in many cases, where they currently end and stub into adjacent properties. I do have one suggestion for another county end access north of the Vinnie property. Whether the county allows that or not is yet to be seen. But I do feel that public road access to a neighborhood makes sense. Could involve the consolidation of some private drives there.
Yeah.
And others closer to the village and within the new plats along BB, some other areas where I thought they were fairly logical to think about when new subdivision proposals come forward that you connect roads. The final thing I want to point out on this map are these two houses that you see, the black symbols that look like houses.
Yep.
And so you see it's called Rural Neighborhood Expansion Area. So I thought about, well, if we have some opportunity or possibility of expanding, neighborhood development areas, which farm do you pick on the edge? Do you pick, I don't know the owners, but this farm, do you pick this farm to redesignate? And then the question is, I don't know. The answer is, I don't know. So the idea here is that these two areas, for various reasons, seem to be the most logical areas where the town might entertain future comprehensive plan amendments and rezonings and subdivisions to grow the size of the gold area, the neighborhood development area. There obviously have a lot of existing development. They have marketable land. We've got two, new subdivisions that have filled in pretty quickly. We know that the areas can sell, so do the developers. I know that as I talk to the village, kind of shrugs and says, yeah, those are areas that we understand the town wants to develop in. And, I'm sure they don't want me to quote them, but the planner, basically said, if you're going to plan areas, those would be the areas that I'd designate for more housing for the town. So those seem to meet the criteria for places that as we go through the annual amendment cycle and consider changes to the comp plan, that the town may entertain these gold areas getting bigger. And then the flip side of that coin is that for other areas that are sort of randomly spaced around the town, to maybe discourage those things and those kind of changes as areas that are instead prioritized for farmland preservation and for places where the town doesn't want to provide excessive services, things like that. So I think, again, third time tonight I forgot the name of the Sunset Ridge. Sunset Ridge. It's on the east side of the town, but it's called Sunset Ridge. But that would, by designating it that way, you wouldn't be inviting someone to add on to it. That was, people live there. I'm sure it's a lovely place, but that was probably some place that the town would approve a subdivision today. So by showing these other areas, I think the idea is we'll encourage people to come forward. If you're the next door neighbor farmer and you're thinking I'm ready to sell, then you're in a good spot. But if you're the next door neighbor to Sunset Ridge, yeah, you got your RDUs, and that's where you kind of sit. So that's described in the chapter some more, but that's my thought with that concept. And I've seen that in other plans. And I think it makes sense for you guys. Oh, the final thing I'll mention is that what I didn't do is I didn't change a thing close to the city of Madison in an area that has been sort of identified as potential boundary change area. That's that sort of notion of let's just not mess with that area right now until things change, get finalized. That's my presentation of the map. I, certainly welcome comments, further suggestions for change, or suggestions that I undo some of the things that I did on this map.
Did you do any rough estimate of how that changes the farmland preservation ratio, those changes that you made?
I didn't, no. We could do that. Yeah, Nick, you and I can talk about that tomorrow morning.
Good.
I talked to Pam about it, and she agreed that it would help. But we didn't try to figure out how much. I would submit that we've cut through a lot of stuff tonight. And the only other thing that I would like you to just take a peek at is this separate document that figure 11 is one of the last things I sent to you. And this is from the current plan.
This is black and white.
I'm sorry. Yeah, it's figure 11, comprehensive plan priority programs. It's got page 50 on the bottom. So, yeah, this was from the 2015 plan. These are things that we're going to work on. Yeah, I'm going to skip that economic development thing tonight, Troy.
Right, I'll find that.
Talking for too long. We'll get to that next time.
Where are we? Right here it is. Okay. I saw this, yeah.
So this is from the 2015 plan and sort of the priorities that were in there. We're writing these other chapters now, or we're going to be soon. Some of these will drop off, like learn more about the village's Koshkonong Creek Parkway. We learned it's not a proposal anymore, so that took care of itself. So some of these things will just drop off sort of naturally. But would welcome any input on what you think about what's here, what should be carried forward and what should be added. Some of the things that we've talked about already to potentially add would be a solar policy, like we talked last month. Sidewalk policy, or sort of like pedestrian movement sidewalk in the town. Yeah.
Just don't want to talk about that tonight.
Oh, okay. And yeah, those are the two that I think really sprung to mind as new stuff. But I'm as we kind of sit down and write this plan draft, everything outside of land use, what do you want us to kind of focus on is the broad question.
Okay.
You can talk about it tonight. You can think about it and talk about it at your September meeting. Your choice.
You want to do it tonight or September?
This week?
Yes, let's talk about that.
I thought I'd like to have some time for review for this and some other things that might influence this. So September meeting.
September?
Yeah.
Put that on the September agenda then.
Sounds good.
Anything else?
That's all I have.
Okay, then I wanted to continue our discussion about future roads to allow for walking and or biking paths.
Yeah.
And at some point, we need to make a decision as to what we want those future roads to look like. And I know at the last time, we kind of talked about collector roads being the ones that would be maybe the wider ones. And
Sandpiper to Damascus, America Way. I think that makes sense that they should maybe have that extra 4 feet. Is that something that you would want the town board to pursue and make that part of our development plans for future development in a subdivision, that we're going to force that cost on a developer?
Right.
So talking roads similar to like Baxter is an example of one that's heavy traffic, one come out.
Well, I think Baxter was always there.
Yeah.
I'm thinking more like American Way, Sandpiper,
Yeah.
Damascus, where they're in a subdivision, they have mostly dead end streets coming into them and they lead out.
Okay.
That being a collector street.
Okay.
Having that one being wider, those side streets probably don't need to be as wide because they aren't going to have as much traffic because they're dead end or shorter. I don't think we would need to force that expense on a developer. But that collector street, do we want to go from 24 to 28 or 32 feet wide? And if so, then do we want to make some accommodation to that developer for that additional expense that they're going to incur, that they're going to complain about? But
accommodation means
It's also a selling factor for the lots.
it
If you're
is.
looking at different developments and this development has that, people
I
are.
mean, he's going to want money to help pay for it or something so that.
he's not absorbing 100% of the cost.
Yeah.
But a
Yeah.
shared effort, I can see a little bit of that.
Yeah.
And the roads, I mean, one thing that came out of this letter is the person said, well, it'd be nice to connect to the bike path. Very true. If you're out on Ridge Road, something like that. I'm not saying Ridge Road should be it, but if there is a road that gets put in that would make it easier for them to get to the bike path, maybe coming into Cottage Grove and then hooking up to it in future development, possible. But the width, what do they have right now?
24 feet.
24 feet total road width?
Paved.
2-foot shoulder. That's what we have now. We're looking at expanding
to either a 28 or a 32 paved with your shoulder.
Okay, so my thought on that is if you're in an area with extremely a lot of traffic where maybe a lot of bicycles would be, maybe you want a little wider path, but it might not require it in this another area. What area that is, I don't know. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but it's not only going to be used for bikes, it could also be just used for walking.
Yep.
Well, you can do, I think we talked about this, you could develop certain criteria, destination, key route to a destination for bikers and walkers, connects the neighborhood to other neighborhoods or existing and future, you can develop standards that if you check one or more of those, in the subdivision ordinance, then you have to build a wider road.
So we're asking the town board to look into it?
What? No. Town board needs some direction from the plan commission if they should do anything about it or not, or just continue to hear about the people that say, well, I don't feel it's safe walking down Vilas Road or whatever road they're on because they're too narrow and we don't have sidewalks. And the existing, if they ever get changed, the towns are gonna probably eat all of that themselves. But if we're going to have new subdivisions coming in, should we have them built that way now so that it doesn't come back on
the town to pay for it at some point.
Really like Mark's suggestion, to come up with a list of reasons why it would be good, and check the boxes, and then if you can't check enough boxes, then you don't have to do it on that one, but however many boxes you want it to be your threshold, you know, come up with, you know, he gave you a couple examples. It connects you to another area, it's close to a destination. Come up with that list of what makes it a road that people are gonna wanna walk and bike on, I guess.
Or you could just run a traffic reading as far as what's the traffic per hour or whatever,
Well, these
in
are,
given times.
these are roads that aren't built yet, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, expected traffic, you can anticipate, you know, that the street would have more traffic than other streets, and that could be one of the criteria.
be one of the
And the
criteria,
feeder,
yeah.
so it's going to be busier.
Well, a good example again is Resop thing. He doesn't have all the houses in there, but through the years, he's going to have a lot of traffic there.
Right.
So he may as well, consideration to do that road.
And this is a through street, you know, because you're gonna have some of these developments, and I'll have ones, then it just goes out, feeds out into the development, and goes back to that street, so it's just inlet, and everything feeds in and back out to the same main. But if you have a street like Sandpiper, like you said, where this, since it's been open, everything just coming all directions.
And that's on Kennedy Road, isn't that his development often? Yeah, so when I think of that, I think I want to get my bicycle and I want to ride to town. Well, I gotta get out on Kennedy Road, and it's gonna be the one that everyone's pulling into or out of, off from Highway BB to go to their home.
But it's not a one that goes straight through. If you had another one straight through, you're gonna have all those people plus the ones that's coming north and south.
Correct. But but that's kind of where I'm thinking. I wanted to have at least a safe
Right.
drive there, and BB, I don't know how to manage that, other than that's a county thing.
That's county.
Yeah, that's county.
That will go down to into Cottage Grove.
Well, now I heard today that Dane County is what, $700,000 for bike paths grant program.
One idea is if, you know, you don't want to pay your town engineer or me to help with it, that the MPO staff would help develop standards for you if you wanted to tap them as a resource.
I think we need some more information. We need to do our own little study, in a sense. That's my thought.
Do we have any costs as to what that would be to do existing roads, to widen them?
Oh.
You'd have to be moving the ditch lines.
Redo every driveway and redo all the ditches.
You got all the, you'd have to acquire all the right of way. That would be the big headache.
Yeah, I don't think that's feasible.
No, not after what we just went through, just to get them all, even for the bridges we're redoing. I don't
Yeah,
know.
when we're redoing, all we're doing is a blacktop over everything, but it's because then you have
Wouldn't
to.
the town have to bring those up to the standard?
You
You know, for instance, Sandpiper, when that needs to be redone, you know, if you rewrite the rules, wouldn't you have to bring that up to code?
Depends on how you write the rule.
How you raise
I
the
mean,
rule, I would think it would be
You know, I'm
this
kind of comparing it to if you remodel a house, you know, if I only fix this little room, I don't have to bring the whole house up to code. But if I do a certain percentage of work, that whole house has to be brought up to code.
I mean, I guess I'm thinking new roads that we haven't built yet.
Right.
Are
Yeah,
going
at a
to
minimum,
need
to those and
to get on top of those now. All of our other 60 miles of road, somebody else is probably going to decide when they're going to spend the money to widen them and put bike lanes in.
it would be nice to have a bike lane.
That's going to cost millions and millions of dollars.
Nobody wants to spend that kind of money.
So you said MPS?
MPO.
MPO?
Yeah, you're in a
Call them
planning area, you know.
Metropolitan Planning Organization for Transportation.
Yeah, I just talked to Bill Schaefer today, and this seems right up their alley. And not about this, but
BV very far. A little shoulder like that, that's the bike lane, I'm like, I don't think so.
Just a little bit more. Inform got.
I go on BV, I get on the sidewalk.
That's okay with you. I mean,
I'll call them, we'll put it on next agenda, hopefully they can get us something. Who wants to do item 10?
Can I make motion to adjourn?
Motion by Myler to adjourn, second by Klinger. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, crazy.
Thank you.
Thank you.